Kia ora team. Today I want to have a wee chat with you about trail cameras. Now, more and more people are using them in their projects, and that's a really good thing. There's no point trapping and hoping. You've got to trap and know and trap and test. It's not the ones we're catching that tell us the full story, it's the ones we're missing that we need to know about as well. And these fellas right here are really good at giving us an idea of how successful we're actually being. Lots of other monitoring methods, but I love using these. But there's some fundamentals around trail cameras that I think we should have a chat about that will help you make better decisions around them and also be more successful with them as well. One of the big questions, or the first question I usually get asked, is what sort of trail camera? Now, there's lots of trail cameras on the market, and some of them are very, very expensive, and they have all sorts of bells and whistles. But for me, the most important thing around a trail camera really comes down to two things. One of them is reliability, because if it's not working, it's not going to deliver what you need, and that's long-term reliability as well. The other one is shutter speed. When you're trying to catch a stoat on the ground or moving through a landscape, shutter speed's really important. So really, I don't need this to play me Netflix movies or cook my breakfast. I need it to be reliable and to catch the animals on film that I'm trying to catch. Simple as that. So once you've picked a model and brand that is going to deliver what you need within your budget and do what it needs to do for you, the second most important thing you can do that will make the biggest difference is location and positioning of that camera. It is the difference between success and failure of your camera. And this is where I see a lot of people getting a little bit wrong with cameras. One of the most common errors I see is where the camera is being pointed a lot across the track. Now, when an animal's running down a track, your camera has to have an incredible shutter speed and trigger time to catch that animal. A lot of the time, if you point your camera across the track, you're going to get a lot of blank photos and be wondering what went through. So one of the keys for me is that I like to point the camera along the trail. It's giving my camera the greatest chance of picking up a small fast animal as it's coming towards me or moving away. So you can see this camera here, for example, I'm not pointing it across the track, I'm pointing it down the track there, and it's nice and easy. Another one is think about where the sun and the moon are. So I like my cameras to be either pointing south or pointing east. I want them with the greatest possible length of time with the moon and the sun at their back to give me the greatest chance of the best photos. Not rocket science, but it makes a huge difference. So in this case, I've pointed the camera south and it's pointing down the track. Okay. The other thing I see a lot of happening is that cameras get put right at the bottom of a tree or a post and they're facing along the ground. Now, I'll be honest with you, some of the animals I photograph on trail cameras are aware of the camera. Pure and simple. I don't see a great deal of aversion, but if you put it in their face and you put it in their eye line, you're going to get a greater degree of aversion. So I like them to be about this height. This is about 5 foot high, and what you can see I've done is I've picked a tree that is pointing downwards. So the other thing is that you want to find and locate the sweet spot for your camera. What does that look like? Well, for me, it's really having that camera pointing about 3 to 4 meters away. So it's hitting the ground about 3 to 4 meters away. So if we look at where that sweet spot is for this camera here, it's right here. So as the animal's coming up the trail, the camera has had plenty of time to pick the animal up as it's approaching, but the sweet spot is right here. And what is the sweet spot? Well, for me, it's where the camera has the greatest possible field of view while still being able at night time to pick up a small furry thing with pointy teeth as it moves through. So it is about that 3 to 4 meters. And I can tell you this camera's been running for about 2 years. And what are we? We're 1, 2, 3, 3.5 to 4 meters. It works really, really well. If you can't find a tree angling down like this, then what I'll do is I'll find a piece of wood like this and I'll loosen off my camera slightly and I'll put that across the back here and I'll crank it right up and that will point it down for you. Really easy stuff, and it works really, really well. Really important that you don't have any foliage where it's going to trigger your camera, and that's what I call sympathetic triggering. If you have that, you're going to get a gazillion photos of a piece of fern waving. So sometimes there's some amazing places where you'd like to put a camera, but you simply can't because of the environment around it. So you're going to be limited by that. Nice and easy on a track like this because there's nothing in the way. So all I'm getting are images of animals. Brilliant. The other big one, obviously, if you're operating in farm areas, is farm stock. You don't want a million photos of sheep. So sometimes you're going to have to think about all of those other factors that are going to clog up your camera and run your battery flat. So think about those things as well. Couple of little tips for me. Generally, where I'm looking for presence absence, what I do is I use a double shot, so 2 photos, and I will space them between 30 seconds and a minute apart. One thing I do notice, possums are real photo hoggers, photo bombers. They will get there and spend all night in front of your camera. I don't know when they eat because they seem to spend a lot of time having photos taken of themselves. But if you have that delay period between photos, you'll have less of them. Sometimes in an area like this, if I've got a possum that's constantly on my camera, I will set a trap for that possum to remove that possum and reduce the number of non-target triggerings that I'm getting, because it's not possums I'm looking for often, it's stoats or ferrets. Nice and simple. So double shot photos and 30 to 60 seconds apart. If you're really looking for a stoat and it's one stoat and you really want to know about it, you want a video clip. Pure and simple. Stoats are seriously quick little animals in the bush, and a 20-second video clip will tell you more than a photo, 9 times out of 10. In a place like this, not such an issue, but if you really need to know about one animal, video clips. A couple of other little traps for young players. When you're opening your camera, if you're swapping your batteries out, then you will find often that the camera will reset itself. So when you change your batteries over, make sure that your date and timestamp has stayed the same and that all your settings are as you need to be. Really easy thing to forget, done it myself, but just make sure and you check that. These base model cameras, they don't have a screen. The more expensive types of cameras do, and you can see exactly on the screen what your camera's pointing at. You don't need that, so long as you're prepared to spend a few seconds figuring it out. So what do I look like when I'm doing that? Well, I will actually walk away from the camera and I will come down and I will look at the camera, A, to make sure the camera's straight, and then also be looking at where that camera's pointing. And that camera's pointing right about here. And then I will also go side on and I will look at the camera from side on and see where that angle is like that too, just as a double checker. I'll be honest with you, when you do that, you'll almost never get it wrong. Like your trapping, it's just taking that little bit of extra care and time and replacing technology with a bit of this. Okay? You don't need to spend a fortune on big screens. They're really nice, but if you can't afford them, don't let that worry you. You'll still be able to make these work really, really well. So that's Trail Camera Basics 101. The other thing I hear a lot of people say is, oh, we don't really want to spend all our evenings looking through camera footage and photos. Well, I'll tell you right now, I love it. Maybe that makes me a bit strange, but I learn more from these about what's going on in my project where I'm targeting predators than from anything else. And if you do video clips and you put a trail camera on your traps and you watch how these animals are interacting around your trap and the way they're moving through the landscape, it's fascinating and you will learn an incredible amount. So for me, I hog the photos. I want to look at all those photos myself. It's better than telly. Right, I think that's pretty much it. That's Trail Camera 101. Go out there, get a couple. I really recommend it, and you'll learn a lot. Have fun. Ka pai.